Hey, what's up, everybody? My name's Tola Omilana. Welcome to the Ourgen podcast. We are in the Ourgen studio with the lovely Ray Rees. He hated that I said that just now, but I had to. But we're doing things a little bit differently. I'm so glad to be back on. Ray's my boy.
Last episode was fire.
Last episode was great.
Good.
No, it was real good. I was talking about it, like, honestly. Like, I was just bringing it up to homies, and I was like, wow, that was really fun.
I think it was key. Good talks. I think essential things, things that people need to start talking about and just be able to express, like have conversation about. So,
absolutely.
If they haven't checked it out, can you go and tag that in?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you haven't checked out the last episode, we talked about education and just like the state of the world, schools, and how they're adjusting to the coronavirus. But it was a great talk. We talked a little bit about ourselves and our education journeys. And so if you haven't checked that out, take the time to do so. You won't regret it. But in the meantime, we're doing things a little bit differently. I'm back, and I'm lucky to kind of ask a couple questions of Ray this time. So that's going to be really fun.
Nice.
Put you in the hot seat a little bit.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
Oh, how the tables have turned.
Yes, what's good, Tola?
Yeah, so I know Ray. I've known Ray for like 2 years now.
Okay.
And so
solid 2 years.
A solid 2 years.
Okay.
And it's been we've been through a very critical stage in life. The early 20s can be tricky and tough to navigate. And so it's a lot of like finding yourself and also trying to figure out what exactly you want to do with your life. And so we've had the pleasure of having a couple talks about those sorts of things and what we want to do. Both you and I are believers. We believe in God and the higher power.
LordMade. Hashtag LordMade. That's like the thing that I've been doing. I don't know if they've seen it. Check out the personal page, but hashtag LordMade. Because people talk about self-made. It's like LordMade, bro. And it's huge because, like it's easy to say self-made. I did this myself. And in reality, God set me up. So hashtag LordMade.
Hashtag LordMade.
Let's go.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay. Add it to my vocabulary.
Let's go.
But I just think that, Ray and I, we joke around a lot and we have fun. But we have had some serious talks, and in those serious talks, I've heard a little about your heart. You came back to the desert in a really interesting way, and it was a moment that God kind of spoke into your life and kind of urged you to do something.
Yeah.
And I think it's super cool that you followed through on that. I know that there's a lot of people who hear that call and don't always listen, and so I'm just curious to hear kind of throughout the course of this conversation how that call has developed into what I think you describe as almost like the vision and the God, like the appointed vocation that God has given for your life. And I think I don't want to speak for you, but I know that it has to do with generations. That's even the name of this podcast. And so you're already following through, but want to give you the floor to talk about that a little bit more for everyone watching.
Sweet. I mean, what to start with? Huge. It dates back to when I was in college, playing college football and stuff, and I ended up leaving college. They heard about it a little bit in the last episode.
Yeah, they did.
I left college and I ended up stepping out to really step out of my calling in a sense of the valley and pouring out to the next generation and pouring out to this community. The valley, not IE Valley or LA Valley, the real Coachella Valley. Like, come on.
You got to say that again.
You have to add that in there. Like, all these fake valleys out here. This is the real valley.
This is the OG valley.
It's hot. There's mountains. We in an actual bowl in here. Like,
so true.
But
it's a microwave.
But and so I stepped out, man, and I know you heard about the story and stuff, and so it's really just for them. And stepping out came and really I served in. For those that don't know, I'm a youth director at a church, but I also have my hand in a lot of other things in community and also creative fields. So it's huge, and so
Yeah. What would you say? Like, if you had to sum up, kind of like, you put your hands in a lot of different spaces, but you work alongside at the church. You also, are in the creative sphere.
Yeah.
I've been blessed to know you in both spheres. But if you had to put in a couple words, what exactly you would call like a vision of what you feel like ties those two things together, what would that be?
Sweet. And so, one big thing for me is, a lot of artists. So let's say this, just to bridge the church and culture. A lot of people are like church, like, oh, but no, one thing that you actually see is a lot of artists actually believe in God. And so they actually, what happens is a lot of people get put off church. And so there's like this idea of, and because, I get it, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of, in a way, of things that we have to revive and things that we have to heal in our community, because a lot of people were hurt by the church. And so, but when you actually look at it, there's just so many artists out there, and I go down the list, that are actually people that follow God. You hear it in their music and they talk about it. And so my thing is this, is how do we bridge, and at the end of the day, everything I do is about a bridge, about building bridges, how to touch all these different perspectives, these different sides. And so one of my big things is always, at the end of the day, for at least regarding church and creative field, is how do we bridge that? How do we pour into those artists, those artists that are blowing up? We have a lot of artists out here that are really taking to the next level, and like, how do we pour into them, not even maybe in a sense of giving them church, but giving them a relationship with Jesus, or giving them a relationship and the tools, man, to survive in this thing. There's millions of artists.
That support.
That support, there's millions of artists. There's so many people out there doing the same thing. And what happens is a lot of them don't have the longevity. They make it for one song, it blows up. And what happens? Their character ends up falling out. They end up having all these things going on. They go down dark paths. And so how do we help them as a church, in a sense of just giving them that foundation so that they could thrive in what they do? So that's my main thing regarding creative and church, is how I want to bridge that. Like, how can we get the secular world and the church? How do we bridge that and become those people that need to be there for those people that so they can succeed? So yeah.
You spoke to this a little bit, and I'm even thinking about, but I love the way that you describe like a bridge, because I do think that bridges signify that there's some distance between two separate places. And so you've described this bridge of like, there's a gap that exists between the creative world, and also like, a relationship with God, and you kind of see yourself as filling in that bridge. What difficulties have you experienced personally in trying to do that, or that you foresee happening as well?
I think on both sides. I think for a lot of creatives out there, a lot of artists, they've had people that maybe, early in a lot of artists started in church. I think it was Zaytoven, one of the biggest trap beat producers, comes from the church background. You name it. You have Travis Scott, these guys, all these different guys that they have backgrounds in church. They've either sang in churches or they have family members in church, and that's where they started hearing music. And so, but I think there's both sides. I think the church, what happens is they end up breaking down people's gifts and their talents and what they're actually called for outside of the church, because what happens is artists want to step out, and what happens is they end up pulling that thing down because they don't see the artist in church, And so that's the scary thing about it, is there's that little dilemma in there. And so as a church now, we have to take that responsibility again. And how do we care for these people? It's not getting people prepped for church, it's getting people prepared and equipped so they can go step out into the world and make an impact. And then on the other side, in the creative side, is there's kind of that wall that's still up. And so what I love to do is, man, they meet each other, like they both need each other. God has gave us creativity. I mean, look at this world, don't make me get all art, poetic and stuff, but the world is creative. The way God did it, the way God has created us, think about the last time you had to think about breathing. Like your body was just like function, like it was created to do that. And so.
No, absolutely. That's so cool. I think that, we each have, things and gifts that God grants us in.
Yeah, true.
I think it's beautiful what you said also. I'm kind of like shook a little bit about what you said about,
come on,
because you're reminded of those moments where you're like, wow, like, an orchestrator of the entire world, and like, how can God, I think that in the church, creativity is sometimes seen as like, a bit more radical, a bit less difficult to control. I think that there's always that tension within creativity and art to kind of go against the grain. And so churches exist as a way, and are often seen as an establishment of rules. And so people often like, and I'm sure like you've even grappled with that as well. Like, what's the moment that, like, have you seen and looked back at your own life and how you've created, how you've developed your own creative voice within the church or away from the church?
Yeah, I think there's a line that you kind of meet early in it. And so you're like, okay, like, how do I walk on this boundary and be that middle person. And so one thing you realize is you're gonna take shots from both sides. Like you'll be eating punches from left and right. And so the good thing is a lot of people that I connect with and network with and do life with is they're good friends. So I've seen people, you know, like yourself that are creative, like so I'm never, one thing I'm always striving for, I'm never the best creative in a room. Like I always try to get myself around other people that are better and that are pushing me and make me uncomfortable because like, dang, they're good at this, you know? And so, but on both sides, it's, for me, I think, you know, one of the funny stories is when I was, I was doing, it was this first year I came back and I was doing videos and stuff like that. And I did this video that, it's so funny. And so I did this video. It was on the border. Like I'm talking about pushing borders. Like it's showing this kid doing drugs and drinking alcohol and stuff like that. It's not actual drugs and alcohol. We just made it look like it. Of course, you know, like to say a movie, you know,
like it just
items.
Staging.
It looks like it's staging. Yeah. And so we did this crazy thing. We called it, I forgot what we called it. Dang, I can't remember what it was called, but we did this idea. And so it was crazy. It was like this, the camera was spinning around this student and he was going through all these things. And then it was like one of my best ideas I ever put together in the moment. You know, I was like, oh, this is amazing. You know, they're going to love it. And it got turned down because it was too much, showing too much. And I'm like, why can't we show this? Is what people want to see. And so in that moment, I could have easily walked away mad, which in the moment I was mad. Don't get me wrong. Like I was mad because I was like, I killed this. What you mean? Like this is the best video there's been in a while. And so, but in that moment I had to be mature and walk away with, okay, there's this boundary, of course. How do we push it and be strategic about how do we move this going forward? You know, like how do we push that border? How do we start to blend those lines? Not in the way of like, not in a bad way, but in a good way. Like how do we help the church be even more creative, and how do we help the creative world become, you know, get the foundation and those key tools that the church does teach.
Yeah. So I know that we've talked a little bit now about, you know, creativity and those two separate worlds and that tension even of navigating those two things as well. Another tension that I know is really important to you is the tension between, you know, our desert is a very interesting place. There's two juxtaposed. I really do feel like it is a microcosm, which is a big word, but like a microcosm.
Big. For those that don't know, what does that mean?
Microcosm is like just like a minuscule version or like a tinier representation of something. So a microcosm of the world just means like the valley almost is like this tiny world. Okay. Yeah. And I do think that you have people from all over. It's a very diverse community. Yeah. But we also have definitely the biggest gap that I see is, you talked about gaps earlier. The gaps in age are definitely a huge one here.
Huge out here.
And I know that that's something that you are passionate about. Yeah. Is like exploring that bridge. But do you mind like explaining a little bit more?
Yeah, I think I'll touch on it. People always kind of hear me talk about bridges, and I'm like, why is he always talking about bridges? And so
if you're around Ray,
I'm always
gonna hear the word bridge.
You hear it at least once a day, solid for sure.
Oh,
but it's huge. I think it's needed. I think for so long in the world everything's segregation. You're either in this box, you're in that box, you're left, you're right. And I think God has made people and people struggle with this. Think about like, you know, like maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I've struggled with something before, in the sense of like, I feel like I'm over here, but at the same time, my body's telling me to be over here. And it's like this pull between, this is what people are telling me to be over here, or should I be over there? Should I be left? Should I be right? And all these things, you know? And so I think there's that tension. What happens is we're going to go what people told us, and we're going to follow, you know, the rules, follow what everyone said, or we're going to live in that tension and say, no, I feel like there's something better here. Like we're going to look behind what, you know, all the blinding things to say there's something on the other side. But regarding age, I think it's huge, and I think you see it too. I mean, you in your industry and where you work in the sense of right now is you work with some older people, they are very interesting people.
Yeah, they have different opinions.
For
sure.
They do strong opinions.
But just like young people as well.
We all do, right?
We all have young.
But yeah, it's huge, and I think for me, at the end of the day, everything I do in life, it's always going to be about the generations. And what do I mean by that? People are probably listening, like, what? Yeah. I like to say it like this. It started back when I was young. I was growing up. Kind of to give context, when I was living, I was born in Blythe, and I actually lived out here my whole life. And so my parents were split up when I was young. And what happened was, my father was around. I mean, I feel, sorry for those that maybe didn't have a father figure around, and I don't want to put that like their feelings down. My father was around, but at the same time he wasn't around. And the reason why I say that is because there was a moment where he'll go to my basketball games, he'll go to my football games, but there was an emotional detachment, and then it felt like, okay, there's this man that's here, and yet he's not here. And, I blamed him for so many years. My name is Randolph Ray Mullen, and a lot of people don't know this. When I was a kid, I used to hate the name Randolph. Like, straight up. Like, that's how bad my father and I relationship was. Like, kind of, it was always, tension here and there. Is I did not like the name Randolph. And I went by Ray. I was like, it's easier. I like this. No one called me Randolph. I used to, like, fight people in, like, elementary school and middle school. Because when they called me Randolph, like, that bad. But yeah, and so growing up, I was like this, I was at this place, this anger, especially in like freshman year of high school. We went through this hard time with my dad, and I want to add this note in here, just disclaimer. Me and my dad have a phenomenal relationship now. We went through a lot of healing, a lot of times, so don't take this and like, oh, he's a bad man. No, we went through our own times. I wasn't good, and there's times, like I wasn't perfect, and so, but yeah, and so freshman year, going back freshman year. So pretty much I was at this point where I was like, I hate my dad. I'm never going to be like him. And then some years went past, and I remember saying, like, I lived growing up like this. Like, I will never be like my dad. And not in a sense of in a bad way, but in a way of, I don't want to live the way he lived. And one day I woke up in college, and I was like, I woke up one day and I had this feeling of like, I'm exactly like my dad. And I remember watching my life and kind of reflecting like the way and not in the sense of I was doing the same things he was doing, but my cycles and patterns were the same as my dad's. And like the way I would say things, the way I would interact with people, like it was exactly him. And one thing I didn't get was, how can I not want to be like this man so much that I'm still like him? And so the reason I say this is because a lot of people out there, they're saying, I'm never going to be like that. I'm not going to be like that parent. I'm not going to be like that dysfunction. But in reality, you will be if you don't work on it. If you don't get the education, if you don't get the enlightenment, if you don't get the healing that you need from that, you're going to be just like that person you don't like. And so same thing with generations. And this is why the reason why I say that is because same thing with generations. When you think about it like this, you have your baby boomers.
Right. Yeah. Are they just boomers? Like, okay, boomer.
Okay, boomer. Yeah, we'll add that in there. You have your boomers. You have your boomers, and then you have your what's after that? As
millennials.
No, it's before that, right?
It's millennials.
Then millennials. Okay, baby boomers, millennials,
and then Gen Z.
Okay. So you see all these different generations. You have the millennials and the generation a little before them. Right in that gap between the baby boomers and them. That they're hard. They work. They do all these things. And so what happens is, you don't see the immediate effects of a generation until about 10 years later. And this is not, I'm not being perfectly scientific. Don't take me correctly, but just for giving people an idea. You won't really see the effects of a generation until 10 years later. And the reason why I say that is because those kids that are born that had to go through what those parents were raising their children, they're affected by that. And so they're going to be in high school, in middle school and stuff like that. And then you're going to start to see the results like, oh my God, And so you hear about it all the time now. And I hate it when the people say, you have older people who say this is a soft generation.
Right.
And they say this, it's a soft generation, this and that, they're lazy. Well, what happened when all this injustice, all these things happened? Yeah. Who was on the front lines?
Right.
Young people. It was high schoolers. It was young adults. It was young people that are on these front lines fighting for what they believe in. Right. And all these people saying that they're soft, but no, they just needed something to attach a purpose to, And what happens is it's so easy to blame a generation and not understand the roots that are attached to it. And so we need each other. Like, I want to be that bridge to show young people you need that older person. And I want to be the bridge to show an older person you did not do your job if that next generation does not thrive. Right. And so I believe we're at such a key place of a generation in our age specifically, because we do know millennials. We, I like to say that. I make this up. People get pissed because I make this up. I call myself the bridge generation, the gap. Okay. And the reason I say this is because I don't really connect with Gen Z and I don't connect with millennials. I'm that middle person where I'm like, I can connect with that, but I can't connect with that. Yeah. And so I feel like I'm right in that middle. And I don't know if you ever felt that tension, like knowing like they don't, technically I'm not a millennial and technically I'm right before Gen Z. So it's a weird age. And so I'm at this perfect place where I see it from a different perspective where, oh snap, all these generations are connected, This is why our generation is soft. the idea of soft is because your generation didn't know how to emotionally show yourselves.
Oh.
You know what I mean? And so, but it's all attached,
Yeah.
you know? And so just to show people out there, me and my dad have an amazing relationship now. We talk about life and all these things. But there was a time in my life I was wondering, why is this man like this? Why is he not emotionally attached? Why does he just go to my football games? Why does he just care about my sports? And what happened in reality is later on, I was so affected by it, not realizing, oh my God, he's like this because of our grandpa. And my grandpa was like that because of his dad. And so it's generational, you know, like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Your generation did not do its job if the next generation doesn't thrive. Like you did not do your job.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a huge thing is like it starts with conversation. And so I really do think that like this idea of you bridging, like I love what you said earlier about like we need the older generation. Yeah.
We need them, 100.
We also need the younger people as well. Like I'm an oldest sibling as well, like the oldest
of
3 children. So I feel that definitely is that like I've definitely had moments where I see how hard my dad is working that work ethic, which is like something that older generation boomers.
This is very true. This is very true.
And I do think that we can learn from like, you know, that work ethic and like really going after and being persistent. But I also think that, you know, the younger generation understands how to speak transparently about feelings and they're passionate and they say what they want to say. I like
to add this on top of that. They're the relationship generation. Right. You know, older people don't understand why young people are so attached to social media. Well, social media gives them the idea of that we're connected. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm seeing what's going on in your life now. It has its bad things, you know, maybe we don't see each other face to face, but the idea is there that we're doing relationship. Like, I know what's going on in your life. Like, I want to be transparent. I want to see what's going on, you know? And so one thing you said was you learned from your father, hard work. Same thing, you know? Absolutely. Like, I could tell you this. I watched my parents bust their back to give me a gift for Christmas. Right. And I used to never ask for gifts because I understood the work that was behind it. And so one thing I could tell you, hands down, I learned from my parents is not how to quit and how to work hard. Right. And so I take that from them, and I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna pass it down to my sons. Yes. But I'm also gonna give them the relationship part with, hey, you need to be as emotionally strong as you are physically strong. You know what I mean? And so
that's so cool. So you're seeing yourself, you yourself as a bridge as well. Yeah. And I think that's like a huge thing. We need that in this world. Like understanding that we all stand to better ourselves when we learn from one another. Yeah. And so, man, that's super.
It's huge. I mean, we could talk about this for days, and so it's huge. I think we're coming up on time as well as I see. But
I have one last question. Then,
of course.
I think that you know you've discussed in a lot of ways like what this idea of bridges are, which I know that I talked to Ray.
Let's get it tatted.
Yeah, honestly, Ray.
Hey, don't be. I'll probably post it, but don't be surprised.
Half a bridge, and we'll
don't be surprised when you see me with the. I'm tatted up, so don't be surprised when you see a bridge tattoo on me.
Know, be on the lookout. It's gonna happen. He's not joking. He's not. Kidding.
Oh no, I get it very.
But I do think like so. You talked a little bit about like bridges and what they mean to you, but what are your hopes then for this podcast that is named Ourgen and like kind of what you hope to see the vision of who you are and how you view bridging and that like mentality? How do you want to bring it to
let me start right here. It's so much bigger than me. I want to add for those out there that may be like, oh, it's about, no, like take my name out of it. I don't care. If I can be behind scenes and let some young people do it and I can just guide them, 100%. But my big vision in the sense of what I feel that's necessary and essential from this is, and I can't show too much yet because we have big plans and where we're going. Podcast, let me tell you this. I'll at least tell you this. Podcast is just the surface. It's just like, lottery ticket where you scratch off the piece. Like that's all this is, to create really those conversations and show people like, we got to start having these conversations. We got to start talking. We got to start doing life. Let's start having a relationship with different people that may not agree with us, but that we can come to a conversation, understand we love each other. And it's like, okay, let's talk about these things. Let's work through it. And so, but with this podcast, I really want to open up that conversation that's going to help empower our next generation. And so, I think that's one question I leave people on all the time is whatever you're doing in life, do you want it just for yourself in a sense that it's temporary, it's done? Or do you want to do something that lasts for your children and your children's children, or not even your children, but the next generation? It's legacy. Not legacy for yourself, like, oh, remember my name, but legacy in the sense of I left something great for the next person.
Right.
And so that's what this is. I even see young people coming in, and interning is just the beginning. Like, I see young people learning how to do camera work, photography, all these things. And so that's just the beginning. But I see young people working for this, like high schoolers that maybe need to make some money, but they want to learn, like actually be equipped in the creative realm and also the business realm, all these different things. And so it's huge. I'm excited. Like, I can't share too much, but I gave him a little taste.
Yeah,
I gave him a little taste. That's just a little, you know,
just a little bit.
Just a little bit of salt in that, you know.
Man.
But yeah.
Do you want to close out? This is your podcast.
Nah, you go ahead. You close it out. This is you. Let's go. Let's see what you got. Let's see what you got.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, Ray has spoken a lot, and I'm leaving really encouraged, and I hope that you guys took something away from this. If you are interested, or we're going to be talking about lots of things on this podcast, and as Ray said, he has like a big vision of like other people sitting on this couch being a part of this, working behind the camera. So if you're interested and want to be a part of this, DM us at Ourgen. Let us know what you want, and we love you guys so much.
Subscribe also.
Subscribe.
Yes. YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Like, we on all platforms, you know.
On all platforms.
So make sure, hey, whatever. If you're a video, I'm a visual learner, so if you're a visual person, watch on YouTube. It's so good. It's important. And so if not, maybe you want to. When you're in the car driving, when you wake up, you're in the shower, throw it on Apple Podcasts. Totally. A lot of people have been moving to the Spotify.
I know.
Maybe we'll have to talk about that too soon. But,
I mean,
but yeah.
I'm biased. So I love Spotify.
They have their perks. They do.
You know, Spotify's the best.
Well, go ahead.
No. But we thank you so much, Ray. Honestly, thank you for having me on. It's an honor to, talk to you a little bit. And I'm glad to be back on it second time. Hopefully many times to come.
Oh, of course.
But we're super excited for what this podcast has in store. You all have a wonderful rest of the day or night.
Morning, night, whenever you're watching it.
Yeah. But until then, we'll see you later.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Peace.
Peace.